Skirt, skirt. Welcome to the 2-Bit Cypher podcast. It's your boy D Brown. Good to be back. I got the legendary C World, C Edmonds. What's going on?
What's happening? What's happening, man? I appreciate you giving me a chance to be on here again.
Yeah. Oh, you already know. Anytime. You know what I'm saying? Let's get into it. So this episode is going to be the art of storytelling from a storyteller standpoint, i.e. you, and then a content creator standpoint. So this came from, I guess maybe 10 to 15 people asking, how do you tell your story? Right. And, telling it, obviously I tell mine on social media, right? I'm a content creator. And I think that there are certain things that you need to be aware of, when it comes to doing it online, right? Because you're trying to build a community, you're trying to, establish yourself, and you want people to see your content, right? So there are certain things you got to do. Then also from a storytelling standpoint, i.e., again, what are some things that we can do there to make it more captivating, compelling? Just something like that. So, and I got something for you. Can I hit you with something early?
Of course.
I was waiting for it. So so check it. Say if somebody were to come up to you, say, I need help writing a story. Why would one come up to you? Why did I choose you instead of just getting on here and doing it? Why did I choose you?
You want me to toot my own horn for a minute?
Hey, SeaWorld, this is my show. Okay, we can do whatever we want. I run this thing. You know what I'm saying?
Well, let me lay out the credentials now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I studied English in college. Actually went from studying English literature to English writing, which I think was smart for me because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to write stories for a long time. I wanted to go into journalism, at the time sports journalism. Obviously, we both have the sports background. I wanted to cover basketball. I wanted to do, I wanted to be in Slam Magazine. I wanted to be in Sports Illustrated. I wanted to write that stuff. So, there's been a lot of time I've spent, crafting stories, whether they're fictional stories or real stories, and reporting stuff. It's interesting because it sounds like it's something anybody could go do, right? Go write about something or watch things.
Absolutely.
Right? And it's not, it's a difficult thing, man. It's hard.
You get it, bro. When you get in there, you're like, oh shit. Hold on. Nah.
No question. And man, I've been writing my whole life, right? I've always been writing. But, for me to now turn that into a profession, that's a difficult transition to make. When you aren't just writing stories for school. It's different than writing an essay or writing, a book report. When you have to write and entertain or write and report something and be accurate and do research, like that stuff is hard. And even when you're writing your own story, like obviously the purpose of what we're talking about today, even when you're writing your own story or trying to tell your own story, you still got to be interesting. You're on social media.
Right. It has to be interesting. Right? Like it just has to, you know what I'm saying? Right. And then just to piggyback on what you said, right? So you have part of your a story written, right? Your story. So just when you read, would you read a chapter to me or something like that? I can't remember how long it was. I said, I need you to finish this story. Obviously it's not finished, but I was like, there's no way this piece of writing is that good. I was like, finish this. I'm hoping that this inspires you to finish that damn story because I'm ready for that story. I was like, wow, this is really good.
I appreciate
and it'll give you something to do.
It does. I do need to do that. You're right.
That's got to be done.
It's tough, man. It's tough
I get it.
Because when you have an idea, and you can relate to this, when you have an idea and you just got to get it out. And when you get it out, you maybe have the beginning of it out. And then once you start getting into the weeds of the details, it's like, dang, I don't feel as hyped about this as when I first started writing.
Hey, I'm gonna tell you right now, I've had so many ideas that I was just like, oh, this is great. I got in front of that camera and did it. I was like, you know what? Nah, this ain't it. This ain't it.
You don't got the same energy, and
you don't have the same energy.
Then it's not gonna be the same.
Nope. I'll tell you, I'll scrap it. I'll scrap it in a heartbeat. Just like, we're not doing this. We'll just do something else. You know what I'm saying? So
absolutely.
Let's get into the discussion. I will go first. I won't do the most important. The most important is going to come later. But when you're telling your story on social media, leave cliffhangers. Okay.
Mhm.
You want to leave cliffhangers at the end, right? Because you want somebody to come back. A cliffhanger could be the difference between somebody following you and not, right? And
Yeah.
just saying,
Yeah.
oh, you know what? That was cool. I'm going to move on, right?
Yeah.
But in the social
Yeah.
media world, you want the followers, right? You want them to share it, right? The cliffhanger is not
Yeah.
necessarily going to create, get the share part of it, but it
Right.
could create a following. Look, I need to see this video. In order for me to see this video, I either have to come back in a couple of days, or if I follow this person, it's going to
Mhm.
come up in my feed, maybe in a day or so, or the next time this person, posts a video. So leaving a
Yeah.
cliffhanger. And for example, for me, like when I tell my story about cancer, I always go into, okay, well, this is my diagnosis. And then the fun starts and the video
Yeah.
ends right there. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
oh, damn. Then I maybe I
Now,
want a little more. Right. So let
right.
me go ahead and
Right.
follow. So
Leave
that's
people wanting more.
you want people to want more, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great tip, man. I mean, that's a great tip in just storytelling in general.
Sure.
Obviously, we're talking about people's personal stories, but when you start thinking about your personal story, it's probably difficult to know when you should leave a cliffhanger, but you should
100%, because you want to just keep
definitely.
going. You want to just be like,
Right.
boom, I'm in the mood, right? Your emotions, especially if you're telling like a story like that, your heart's
Yeah.
open, you're in the mood. You want to just keep going. Don't keep
Yeah.
going because,
Mhm.
not to cut you off, my bad, but
Nah.
like another one of the most important aspects of social media is watch time, right?
Yeah.
So if you're just going on for a minute, that means you have to keep your audience for that whole minute. Then if you don't stop there, now you're going into two. So you're just
Yeah.
now you have to try to keep your audience for 2 minutes. And I'm gonna tell you right now, outside of just talking about people are not going to sit there for 2 minutes. Half the time they're
Yeah.
at work. You know what I'm saying? They're just quickly
Yeah.
looking at videos. So,
Yeah.
and I'll
Yeah.
get into that part later, but you got to keep that story compelling that whole time. So watch your watch time.
No question. And that's interesting you say that because I feel like that goes right hand in hand with some of the basic principles of writing articles, right? When I was in journalism, when I was doing sports reporting, and I was on the sidelines and I was interviewing coaches and players, when you actually put that article in the newspaper, you have to catch people's attention with that one, with the title. The headliner has to draw attention, right? But then in the first couple sentences, you've got to put the thing that people want to get out of that, because the longer you go, the further you go, the less interested people are going to get. And that goes
All
right
day.
along with the social media concept,
All
right?
day.
After 30 seconds, people are kind of like, all right, what's this about?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I still watching this? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's the same concept when you write a story. You got to be interesting early. Leave the boring stuff for later. That's actually one of the things that I kind of jotted in my notes here before we started, is the most compelling part of your story should have the most detail, right?
Mm-hmm.
The story has ups and downs, it has boring parts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't detail the boring stuff. People struggle with that sometimes, though. You
See,
know, they struggle with that, man. When they get to that part where everybody's like, "Why? Move on from this."
that's what,
Where's
man,
the
I'm telling
interesting
you.
part?
I'm telling you. See, I talk about this, and I don't want to be the asshole here, but I talk about this when I'm, talk about when people are telling their story, like,
Mhm.
and they're oversharing, right? You can
Yeah.
overshare, right? You
Hmm.
have to be like, look, maybe this piece isn't all that great. You don't
Right.
have to go into super detail. And I always tell people, let me get the surface level. Just tell me what happened. Oh, you know what? This is what happened. This is what, okay, cool. You don't have to go into that detail, because that's where you lose people.
Hmm.
That's where you
People
lose
will
people.
check out.
And to piggyback on what you said about like your title of your article.
Yeah.
So we call that a hook. A
Yeah.
hook is the beginning of your video where you are trying to capture your audience. So like for me, it would be my battle with cancer. Boom. Okay, that's kind of compelling, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
boom, my battle with Hodgkin's disease, or just something like that, to where you're like,
Yep.
okay, I know what this is about. And you want to get it out what this is about. So you don't want people to look and be like, I don't know what this is about. Tell them what
Right.
it's about right away. Right. Hey,
Hmm.
this is
Hmm.
about my battle with cancer, part one. And
Part one.
then right. And then you just go from there. Like the
Yeah, man.
title is crucial.
Yeah. I think it's interesting when you talk about something that people want to know more about. I think that's a good gauge of whether or not if it's a story that should be told, right? When you say my battle with cancer, there's only a select amount of people who have had cancer, for one, but then obviously known someone who's had cancer. It's different coming from a cancer survivor. Like, so that in itself is compelling, right? So I'm interested right away because I don't have that life experience.
Yep.
So
And that's what you want to create
right away.
That's what you want to create. You want to create something right away. Just boom. Oh, okay, let me get into this, because the other part of it is people online most people are online for a specific reason, right? Like I either want to laugh, or I'm looking for like healing advice, like DIY stuff, pet stuff. Like people have their own little niches. Like I'm online because I want to I want DIY. I like doing stuff in the house. I don't care about anything else. And then you got your people that like want to share their story and want to listen to other people's story. So then, to go into, to piggyback on this, is the niche involved. So one thing that I do is ask myself, why would somebody want to follow me, right? Before I do any piece of content, I ask myself why, right? So when I do something, I try to put myself in, my audiences, because you're doing it for an audience. When you're doing social media, people, that's the other part people don't understand. This is for an audience. People, this is being pushed out to people. So it's, why would somebody want to follow me, or why would somebody want to watch my story? Because I am not the only cancer survivor, right? I am not. So if you lined up 10 people, I look at it like this. If there's 10 people in front of me, or I'm with 10 people, I'm with 10 people, I need to figure out how I can get people to follow me, right? Instead of the other 9.
Exactly.
Like, what are we going to do? What am I going to bring to the table that people are going to come back to me instead of going to the other 9?
Yeah, I think that's probably the part that people have a hard time. I mean, obviously there's several parts that people have a hard time with, but I think that's the part that a lot of people will really struggle with, because it's kind of finding the thing that makes you unique and highlighting that thing, because most people don't know what makes them unique. They just, they just exist. Right. And that's, I don't want to say that like a cocky asshole, but that's just true. Most people don't know.
It is what it is. They don't.
Right away until you told them.
Somebody tells you, or you do it enough to where you're like, because even when I started, I wasn't doing any of this type of stuff when I started. I wasn't at all. And then you come into your own, like, okay, got it. Let me settle in.
Yeah.
Just something like that. Because like you said, I didn't know what made me special, what made people want to follow me or watch more of my videos. You got to figure that out.
Yes, absolutely. And that's actually, that kind of goes into one of the other things that I think is really important when we're talking about structuring a story, is having people around you that are honest. Like, to me, that's such a crucial part of telling your story, is practicing with people you trust. Even most people who are good at storytelling have practiced, and they don't even know that they've practiced. They've just told stories their whole life, and they've seen how people react to it, and they've heard responses, they've seen in people's faces, they've gotten laughter, whatever it might be. They've told stories. Most people don't just walk into life and become a great storyteller without having done it several times and practiced, and had people say, you know what, that's not very funny, or that's not very interesting, or whatever it might be. You need people in your life that are going to be like, you know what, that's the thing about you that's unique, or that's the thing that people don't care about. Skip that. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
People do that.
Yeah. And that you've done that to me before. Like, I've come to you with something, say, hey, I want to say this. You're like, I would say it this way. Just constructive. You want something constructive, like, instead of starting your story off that way, why not start it this way? It's just going to create, and that's what you're looking for. And then, I could go on all day about that. That feedback is crucial, and you have to be open to accepting that feedback too, whether it be good or bad, right? It doesn't matter, or not necessarily good or bad, but it's just whether it be something you want to hear or not, right? Because to you could think this is fantastic, and then you go somebody who specializes in this, and they're like, I would do such and such. And then now from there, that's your choice. That's the best part about being a consultant. I always say that, because I am a social media consultant. Like, hey, you don't have to listen to me, right? But I'm going to say this because you came to me from my experience, my professionalism. Don't. See what happens. Now, when you come back, you're going to hear it. You already know. You see my shirt. So when you come back to me, you're going to hear it. Now
Right.
we can clear this up, but
What
you
you
know what I'm
asked for.
saying?
This is
Yeah,
what you asked
it's
for.
what you asked for, but you got to be open to it. You can't ask for help or go seek help and then not at least listen. I'm not saying you have to
Yeah.
take it, but at least go into it open.
Yes.
You know what
Yes.
I'm
And that's
saying?
tough. People don't like, I mean, everybody acts like they like feedback until they receive it. You know what I mean? Everybody acts like they want to hear your criticism and your critiques until somebody says, you know what, you should change that. Then you get defensive, then you get, frustrated, then you get your feelings hurt. And like,
Even
that's why I say, if you're going to practice, do it with people you trust, because you know those people care about you. They're not going to tell you
right.
something that hurt
And
you
I
or tear you
still,
down.
man, I still do that with y'all. Like I'll send
Yep.
y'all something. It's especially you. You be like, hey, I would this is you can bring something extra. Like you can do just a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
bit better, but that's also because you know me. It's like, hold on,
Yeah, yeah.
I've been talking to you forever. I've been listening to your videos forever. We can boost this up. It's not
Yeah.
bad, but
Right.
we can make
Right.
this better. We can
No
make this
question.
better. And sometimes that's hard to hear. And even for like for me, sometimes I'm like, we're gonna fight. Like
Right,
I'm saying
right,
right now,
right,
you say one more thing about this
right.
piece of content that I spent some time on.
Correct.
We just gonna talk
We're
it
gonna
out.
scrap. No
It's gonna be
question.
some smoke in
Or,
the city,
or you just gonna post it,
or I'm
right?
just AC,
Without without anybody seeing it.
or I'm just gonna
You'll do
post it.
that too. You'll
Right?
do that too.
You can call your caddy off, and that's the
Right,
other part. You
right.
can do, one of the things about something I don't even have written down. One of the things about telling your story is you can actually tell it how you want, right? You
Yeah,
can just say,
yeah,
hey, I don't care.
yeah,
You can just say that. If
yeah.
that works for you, go ahead. That's the beauty of telling your own story,
Right.
is you can tell it how
Exactly.
you want,
Right. Exactly. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. And
you
if you
know?
don't want a ton of feedback and a ton of criticism, then you don't have to have that, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's up to you, but it's not going to be, the quality isn't going to be there.
right. It's
So
just not. Mm-hmm.
not,
Mm-hmm.
you need people like that. And that's kind of the last thing. One of the last things I put down for my
Yeah.
notes is that if you know your story, you kind of have to outline it. You have to put it together
That's
in a
one
way.
that I had. Yes,
Yeah.
I
Did you
had the
have that?
same
Okay.
thing.
So
Yep.
yeah, see, we're on the same page. You
Yeah.
have to outline. You got to know how you're going to start, where you're going to get to in the middle, and then how it's going to finish. Even if you don't know the details in between of everything, that's
Mm-hmm.
from writing a story or telling a story. You got to know the highlights of what you want to touch on at some point.
You
How you
have
get
to.
there, you'll figure out.
You will
But you
figure that
got to have
out.
the
Yes, for
yeah,
me, I do parts. Okay. Right. Break it down into parts. Okay. You know your story, right? You can just say part one is going to be this. Like for me, part one is my diagnosis. Part two
yeah,
is usually my port story. And then part three is just getting into treatment, and then some of the mishaps through treatment. And then, the end, right? Like
yeah,
you break your story
yeah,
out and practice your story. You
yep,
have to, like, you don't have to, but another part of content is if you're up there pausing and stuttering and just taking all these long breaks, you're going to lose
mm,
people,
yeah,
right? And
yep,
that's why I could say be comfortable in your story, because if you start talking about something that's going to open you all the way up, you might
yeah,
freeze up during the middle of it. You might just start
yeah,
crying, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Crying, and then you're just like, you're thinking, and you're going to lose people, right?
yeah.
Because people are just, and that's just unfortunate, but that's
Mm-hmm.
how social media works. People's
That's
attention
true.
span isn't very long until you get your following. But that's what we're trying to do now. You're trying to build your following. And once you get your following, you'll have enough to where people will watch it and then, move on. But when you're
Yeah.
just starting, you have to
Yep.
understand you're doing this in a pool of millions of people. So somebody's going to see you and be like, okay, this is somebody new. What you got? Oh,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
now it's up to
Exactly.
you. Now it's up to you. But if you're not ready, don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't
Right.
do it. Don't,
Yeah.
because I'll get sometimes, oh, well, this is great. This is inspiring me to tell mine. Make sure you're ready. Don't
Right.
just look at a video and say, well, damn, it's my turn, and you're not
Hmm.
ready.
Yeah. You're not. You're not. And what people don't realize, and I've fallen into this category as well. When you get emotional telling your story, you can at times lose what you were going to say, right? Because that emotion hits you, and then you forget where you were. Like, wait a
You
minute,
forgot. You
where did I?
forgot.
Where was I going with this? Because if
You
it's something
forgot.
that's personal, it should hit you emotional, but
Absolutely.
emotionally, I should say. But
Yep.
it's something you have to control in the moment, right? You have to be able to calm your mind. You got to be able to think clearly. You got to be able to get your thoughts and your words together. So that's why I say you got to practice, even though it may come across at times as I don't want to practice this because it's going to sound rehearsed. You don't want to jumble your words. I would rather have somebody sound like they've practiced this than somebody come up and start stuttering and stopping and
Yeah.
pausing, and like then you again, like you said, you've lost your audience at that
You're going
point.
to
Now
lose your
nobody's listening.
audience. You're going to lose your audience. And, like I said, I'm totally with you. You lose that train of thought. You're cooked,
You're cooked.
because you can start going into your story and think of something. And now you're thinking about this whole other part of the story that wasn't in your notes. So
Yep.
now you're like, do I shift, or what do I do?
What do I do?
Now you're running on. Now you
telling
told this
parts of
part
the
of the
story that
story
people are
that
interested
you didn't even have this in your outline.
Yep.
And now your story's getting long. Now it's getting long, and you're thinking now, because you're trying to do it off the cuff.
Yes.
I'm telling you right now, doing something off the cuff in front of this camera is not easy.
Not
you turn
idea.
that camera on and you start thinking about, well, everybody's going to see this, or how many people are going to see this.
Yeah.
And you just start running on. 3 minutes have gone by and you've lost almost everybody.
Nobody's interested anymore.
And you don't want that. And for me, last on my list is be yourself, right? When you tell your story, be yourself, right? And for me, and I feel like people will be attracted to yourself. Like for me, my best stuff is just me, right? No matter how savage, ratchet, whatever word you want to call it, you know what I'm saying? But that's still my best stuff. How petty, that's still my best stuff. And when you're yourself telling your story, like for me, I want humor in my story. I don't care how emotional or deep the story gets. I still want you to laugh, because that's how I got through it. That's how I get through things. So don't think that you have to just get up there and be like, hey, this is my story, I got to tell this so serious. And you're not a serious person. That's what I mean. If you're not a serious person, if you're a goofball like me, a clown, tell your story that way. That's how you are. Like if you were to hear me get up there and really get serious, you'd be like, nah, I don't know. Especially if you've seen me, you'd be like, you're trying too hard. Now you're just trying too hard. That's not who you are. That's not who you are. You're up there trying, and I'm trying not to cuss, and I cuss. That's all there is to it. You know what I mean? Like you're just gonna be like, I don't know.
Right. It doesn't come across authentic. It doesn't come across sincere or genuine.
And that's what you want. You want that sincerity. You want that. You want it to be genuine. That's what people are. In my opinion, when I listen to stories or watch people's stories, I want authenticity. Ooh, I'm glad I got that out. All right.
Hey,
I'll struggle doing something like that.
I'm glad you got through that one.
I had that little hesitation at the beginning. I was like, oh, are you going to say it or just switch it up? Okay, we'll just go ahead. You know what I mean? But that's what I'm looking for.
No question.
That's what I'm looking for all day.
It's funny when I think about this, Jackie Chan. Funny thing about Jackie Chan is that when he first got into acting, obviously he does his own stunts, which is unique. But the thing he wanted to do that was unique from all the other martial arts guys that had come before him was add humor. So like when you watch like Jackie Chan's movies, especially his earlier movies, he'll get into these big choreographed fights. He's doing all these flips and kicks and punches and everything, but he'll do something funny where people laugh in the middle of a huge action scene. And I remember him talking about that. He's like, I didn't want to do it the way that Bruce Lee did it, and Steven Seagal and Van Damme and all these guys that came before. I didn't want it to be this super macho action scene. He's like, I wanted people to be entertained, but also, laugh. I wanted people to say, oh, that was incredible. Those martial arts moves were incredible, but also laugh. Like that's
100%.
the unique thing that you bring to the table. You know what I mean? So as soon as you start getting, formulatic and you start doing things the way that everybody else does, then one, you've lost your uniqueness, and two, you just fall into the ocean of people who are doing this, and that's not going to get you any clicks or views or followers either.
It's just not. And that's something that I struggled with early, because when you're on social media, you're watching everybody else do what they do. So then you're like, oh, okay, let me try to copy that. And especially on TikTok, is a lot of using other people's sounds. So now you're trying to use somebody else's sound and be like them. No, but then that can happen when you're telling your story. You watch somebody tell their story and they're nice and firm and steady Eddie, and you try to do that might not be you.
That's not who
but
you
you
are.
liked the
Yeah.
way they did it, right? And that's the other
Yeah.
part, because you liked the way they did it, but that doesn't mean that you have to do it that way. You just liked
Yeah.
it and was like, oh, this is great. The way they're telling the story is great. Let me try this and do this. And it doesn't come out how you want it to, because that's not you.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, look at anybody in any industry that's been a groundbreaker. You know what I mean? Like Oprah Winfrey wasn't the first talk show host, right?
Exactly.
But Oprah did it in a way that nobody else did it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was unique to her. She could have followed everybody that was doing it the same way. Like I said with Jackie Chan, he could have done it the same way all the other action stars did it. Arnold Schwarzenegger is the king of one-liners. He could have been like all the other action heroes before him, but
For
he
real.
added that to, and
For
that
real,
made
I
him
think
unique.
everybody who you see like on a day-to-day basis, or everybody who's been, huge, has their own, like Dave Chappelle, Kevin Hart, Martin Lawrence. Like there's a whole bunch of comedians, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you have to do it your way. Like, and each and everybody's style. Like you see Martin Lawrence, you know what you're gonna get, right? You see Dave Chappelle, you're going to get some deep stuff mixed in with just some in your face goofy stuff. Like, oh, you're like, man, Dave, what the but that's Dave. He doesn't change. He doesn't change. He will talk about anything and say anything, and he doesn't care. And that's kind of the other part that I did touch on. You got to kind of not care a little bit as well, right? Because you're going to get all this feedback. You're going to get good feedback, bad feedback, right? That's the other part. When you're out there online, you are going to get everything. Like, hey, this sucked. Somebody's gonna be like, this sucked. And and that goes back into my whole I don't give a F theme. Because somebody is going to tell you it sucked. And somebody's going to tell you you're ugly. Somebody's going to tell you whatever. And if you let that creep up, you are cooked.
Yeah, man. You got to have some thick skin.
Not everybody's going to like your story. But that's okay. But you have to know that going into it. You have to know not everybody's feeling, like for me, not everybody feels my style. Not everybody likes that in your face, all that stuff, like leave me the hell alone, whatever you want to call it. But again, there are many people that do. And the more people that do outweigh the people that don't, but it's those little comments that get to you. Hey, this sucked. I'm telling you right now, you get up there, tell a whole minute story, and somebody says this sucked.
But take a line from Drizzy. Jealousy is just love and hate.
Right. You just mad because you didn't do this. You just mad because you can't do it. Right. But again, if you don't have that thick skin, or if you're worried about how other people feel on that level, it might stop you from finishing your story.
Yeah.
Especially if you get 5-10 of them, which you might get a whole bunch of them. Like, hey, this sucked. Hey, this sucked. This sucked. This sucked. And then if you're like, yeah, maybe it did suck. Right. That's what happens. You can be like, you can get in this mood. Now you're second guessing yourself. Like maybe it did. And it probably, I'm telling you right now, it didn't. I'll tell you it didn't. I don't care. If you get out there and tell your story, it didn't suck. Right. You know what I mean? But there are people that just don't care. Hey, it is what it is.
They're there to attack you. They're there to pull you down. I mean, you've had comments where it's not even about me, and I'm like, I don't like that at all. Like I'm ready to go on the internet and attack people for you. You
already know, right? And sometimes, hey, I'm going in. Hey, let's jump in. Right. And that's just the nature of it. That's the nature of it. But you're right. Like you've even said, hold on, let me just slide on over here and say something. Right. You can go down rabbit holes doing that. And I'm a fan of doing that every now and then. But I'm just saying you can go down rabbit holes doing that. You're arguing with people and stuff like that. And then it'll start to play with you. Once you start thinking that your content's not good, you're in trouble.
Yeah. Slippery slope, man.
Yeah, because then you're going to start switching it up. Now you're doing all types of stuff just to see if something sticks. Now chase it,
followers, and chase clicks, and when you start chasing it, I feel like, and I'm not a content creator, so you tell me if this is accurate. When you start chasing those things or trying to get those things, that's when it's going to be not great quality material.
100.
Right? I feel like that's when you're
100.
missing the mark. You'll get the clicks when you're just being truly, authentically you.
People want that. That's what they want. They want to see you being you. They don't want to see you trying, because you can tell when somebody's trying. I don't care what nobody says. You can tell when somebody's trying. You can, or when they're trying too hard, or unless you're acting, Right. Okay, cool. But you can tell when somebody's trying up there. And in the social
Yeah.
media world, there's a whole lot of things going on that can throw you off to where
Yeah.
you're like, and one of those things is not getting the likes and the clicks,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Now you're like, I did 5 videos and they all didn't do very well. Nobody
Yeah.
liked them, nobody shared it. I gotta switch it up.
Yeah.
Now you're
Yeah.
just spiraling out of control.
Now what?
Now
Yep.
what?
Yep.
Now what?
Yep.
What if those
Now
don't
what?
work? Now you tried 4 different things and none of them work. Now you're getting
No.
ready to get off. Now
Right.
you're like, I'm getting ready to get off, but you have to start. You have to
Yeah. Yeah.
build. And very few. Now, there are a few people that can just start and go, right? You just had that
Yeah.
personality, like, boom, I can get out here, do all this. But that's not doable for everybody. You have
No.
to
No.
start at
No.
ground zero and just say, we're going to give this a shot. But that's also why you map everything out. That's why you plan everything out. This is my plan. I got to see this out. Now,
Yeah.
don't start tripping out when it doesn't do very well.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Be
know?
smart, be patient with yourself,
Yeah,
and see what happens from there. So,
absolutely. Yeah,
there's
yeah,
great tips.
yeah, absolutely. That was actually pretty good. You got anything else? I was
No,
feeling that.
man.
We
I'm
did. We
good.
we knocked that one out the park. You already know.
I think you got that.
I'm
I think you
judging
got
this
that.
whole time. Yeah, I feel good about this one. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. If you like the
Yes, sir.
podcast, go ahead, subscribe. I'm gonna get back into it. Me and SeaWorld gonna get back in the lab. I can't guarantee it, but I'm always gonna say it. You know what I'm saying? That's all there is to it. But I am gonna get back into the lab. If go ahead and subscribe, share. We out of here.
Later.
All right, SeaWorld, get at you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes,
Out.
sir.